Episode 1, 5-1 Star Wars Characters.
People think Star Wars is just a show and people enjoy. To this family, Star Wars is life.
Hello and welcome to the very first edition of 5-1. Today featuring the best 5 Star Wars characters from the movies and the cartoons. The premise of this show is pretty simple. Each week we will discuss a new topic and we'll give our 5 best answers to that topic from 5-1. The topics can really range to anything: movies, TV, sports, food and drink, really anything we have a common interest in. For today's episode, I'm joined by some pretty rad Star Wars experts. Sitting here with me, I've got Jett, my 9-year-old son, and Krayt Dragon Kade. That's with 2 Ks, you get it? Krayt, Kade?
No.
Okay, Krayt Dragon Kade, my 12-year-old. So, Kade, I'm going to ask you to start us off today. Why did we choose Star Wars characters for our premiere episode?
I thought this would be a good first episode since nothing too complicated, and I know there's a lot of Star Wars fans.
I agree, there's a lot of Star Wars fans. It's not too complicated, and we're kind of a Star Wars family, right? I mean, we always have been.
We were born. When I was a baby, I used to make the Vader noise.
That's right. I was going to talk about that as part of my choices here. Okay, well, I think it's a good first choice for our first episode. We're just going to have some fun. We're just going to talk about our top 5 characters. There's no rules to how you make your list and how you want to talk about it, and we'll figure this out as we go. But I'm curious to see how you guys came up with your list and the kind of thoughts you put behind your choices and why you chose them. All right, you guys ready to get started? All right, so the way this is going to work, we're going to go around the room. Jett can lead us off. He'll lead us off with his number 5. Kade will give us his number 5, and then I'll do mine, and then we'll each go around and do our number 4. How's it sound?
Good.
All right, Jett, let's see what you got. Who's your number 5?
My number 5 is Darth Vader because, to me, in all the Star Wars movies and the cartoons, even non-canon, I think he has the coolest storyline ever. From being a Jedi to turning into a Sith to betraying Obi-Wan is amazing to me.
I think that's a good choice. George Lucas has often said, when most people watch the original trilogy, the first 3 movies, they feel like those movies are about Luke Skywalker. He's kind of the hero of those movies. But George Lucas has said that the Star Wars saga, from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy, all 6 of those movies, is the story of Darth Vader, of Anakin Skywalker. So in a way, he's the main character. And I like the way you described why you picked him. What that's called is a story arc or a character arc. And that means that he started somewhere and finished somewhere else, and the way he got there is his character arc. And he's got a very complex one. He did start off as kind of a badass Jedi Knight, the most powerful one, had the highest midichlorian count, even higher than Yoda's. He was prophesized as the chosen one and had a horrible downfall, brought down the Jedi, destroyed the Jedi Order, him and Darth Sidious, and then redeemed himself right before he died. And probably one of the most memorable scenes in the whole saga with him and Luke, right?
My opinion, most people would probably say overall Darth Vader is a bad guy, but I think out of his whole life, he is a good guy to me because at the end he realized that he needed to redeem himself. Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely okay. Do you have any thoughts on Darth Vader?
I think it was really cool how he turned and how Darth Sidious saw the power in him when he took him in and made him who he was. But I could tell, Anakin wasn't very happy when he found out, Padme and stuff like that because he was clouded by the dark side of the Force.
Yeah, he was always kind of on the edge, it seemed like. Like, he was so powerful and he just wanted to do the right thing, but he was always on the edge of that gray area between light side and dark side because he never felt like it was enough for him. He always wanted a little bit more than he was supposed to have or more than he could have or faster than he wanted it. And that's kind of the definition of the dark side or how you slide into it according to Yoda. Yoda said, the path to the dark side is Luke asks him, "Is it more powerful than the light side?" And he says, "No, it's quicker. It's more seductive." So it's an easier path, and that's what Anakin seemed like he was always after, even though he had the potential to be the greatest Jedi of all time. Good choice, Jay. Good job with your number 5. Kate, who did you pick for your number 5?
My number 5 is Boba Fett because I love bounty hunters and what they do and how they're always not with the light side or the dark side. They're just kind of on their own just to make, the credits and money. And Boba Fett particularly because even though he doesn't have a big part, I feel like he was a really different character when they first showed him. He had like different powers when he was fighting Luke on Tatooine, and even though I wasn't there to see the movie, I bet people were shocked when they saw what he could do because they haven't seen something like that character before.
I think that's a good choice, although, spoiler alert, I did not put Boba Fett on my list.
That's a big surprise to me. I thought for sure you would have Boba Fett on yours. I'm glad you picked Boba Fett, Kate, because I didn't put him on my list either, even though I thought about it. I love Boba Fett. And we talked about this earlier. It's interesting that he's got such a big fan following when he does so little in the movies. He really isn't in it very much. He's got very few lines. And he shows up a little bit in episode 5, and then he dies in the beginning of episode 6, and that's it. But you know what? He looks cool. He's got awesome armor. He's got awesome gadgets on his armor. And he comes across as just a badass, right? I mean, he just doesn't give any Fs about anything. He's there for himself. Like you said, he's not good or bad. He's just Boba Fett, and he's there for himself. I really hope that one of these anthology movies that Disney's making now that they've taken over the franchise is a Boba Fett origin story of some sort to see where he came from and how he became the Boba Fett that we saw in the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Well, in the first part when you described him, that's kind of why I didn't put him on my list. If he was like in the movies a lot, then he would for sure be on my list.
Yeah, and I guess we forget that he is in the prequel trilogy too, as a kid, right? He's Jango Fett's clone of himself. And Jett, you and I were talking about the saddest moments in Star Wars earlier, and you picked, one of them was when Jango Fett dies because Boba Fett picks up his dad's severed head and holds it, the helmet to him. That is pretty sad.
That was Kade.
Oh, was that you, Kade?
Yeah, it was
me. Oh, okay. Well, it's just you forget that he's in that too because he hasn't really become Boba Fett yet. But you see in that battle when Jango is fighting Obi-Wan on Kamino, and Jango's trying to get away. Boba is ready for a fight. He's in the ship and he's shooting at Obi-Wan, and you could see even at a young age he's going to grow up to be a badass. All right, any more thoughts on Boba? Okay, we'll move on. My number 5 is a Jawa. And you might think that's kind of a weird choice. I took a different approach for my list. If we all just did our 5 favorite characters, we'd get a lot of repeats. There'd be Luke and Obi-Wan and Han Solo and Darth Vader and Yoda. And I kind of decided not to go for the obvious choices in my list and kind of think of the other things that make Star Wars great besides the amazing heroes that we have in our story. So I picked the Jawa for a couple reasons. Number one, I think one of the things that makes Star Wars so cool is the creatures they have in the movies. In today's movies with CGI, it makes it easy to have whatever you want. But back then it was harder to do that, and they had costumes and puppets and things that were really different and kind of groundbreaking for movies back then. And the Jawa, I think, is a good example of that because, number one, the design on them is really cool. They've got these kind of like Jedi-looking robes where you can't see their face.
Isn't R2-D2 a trash can? What they did?
I think he was a trash can. Yeah, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. But they've got these robes you can't see their face, so they're kind of mysterious. They got these glowing eyes. It's just a really cool design. I think they look cool and they're kind of mysterious. You don't know if they're good guys or bad guys. They're scavenging out in the desert just trying to survive.
I think they're good guys. Didn't they help R2-D2 and C-3PO?
I also really, they did sorta. They also did,
They stole them,
yeah.
Right? They were out on their own, and the Jawas, they shot R2-D2 with a blaster, and he went and fell over, and they took him and sold him. Like they were just looking out for themselves.
Oh, I didn't remember that part.
I also really like the sand crawlers they travel. I thought those were really cool, and I can make one out of paper. And me and my friend, we talked about Jawas at school, and we really are fascinated because like on how they work and how Luke like buys stuff from them and sells them like parts, and they travel a lot. They have like banthas and
Yeah, you're right. All that stuff is really cool about them. And another thing that's cool is somehow, they live on this really harsh planet. Tatooine, it's a desert planet, and they manage to survive, even though they're out there fighting, Tusken Raiders who are bigger and more savage and have weapons, and they manage to survive somehow. So I just think that Jawas are cool, and I always think about when I think of Jawas. Kade, Jett, you probably don't remember because you were really little, but Kade, you and I went to a convention, a Star Wars convention that first year, and there was a kid who was dressed as a Jawa.
I do remember that.
And had it was the coolest costume I've probably ever seen. It looked really just like a Jawa from the movies.
Well, the Predator costume we saw was amazing, also my opinion. So as that like Sith thing, it had a really cool mask, you remember, at that one place?
I think I do remember, yeah.
I remember playing some video games and reading some books and comics, and how some Jawas are force sensitive, and they hold like their own like gangs and tribes and stuff, and so some Jawas might be like against other Jawas. And
yeah, I know. It's funny you mentioned that there's a lot of characters that in the backstories in the books and the comics that are things that are not canon anymore that end up being force sensitive. Jawas are one of those. I liked how in the when they were showing the trailers, the previews for the Old Republic, they showed somebody drop kicking a Jawa. Do you remember that?
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah, so good choices for our first round, guys. Let's go to our next round, unless you guys have anything else you want to say about the Jawa.
They're not as good as the Ewoks.
Okay, good call. All right, number 4, Jett, who you got?
For number 4, I have Yoda. He is an awesome walking green goblin. It's amazing he could fight like really good, and he's really old. And you remember number 3? Yeah, I think it's a number 3 when he fights Darth Sidious. He if you see him, he like moves around so fast, and it's crazy. He's like 900 years old, and he could still do that stuff.
Yeah, Yoda's an interesting one. He's one of the few characters that plays a big role in both the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. So he spans across both. It's hard to forget sometimes, or easy to forget sometimes, that he's not even in original Star Wars. He's not in the first movie. He doesn't show up until Empire, and instantly becomes a classic character. It's kind of the wise old master of the Jedi, and he, in my opinion, in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, he's really two different characters. The original trilogy, he's very playful and jokes around a lot, and he's stealing Luke's food, and he's playing with R2 and fighting against him, and in the prequel trilogy, he's more serious, right? He's training people, and he's still wise and all that, but he doesn't have that kind of playfulness that made him very endearing in the original trilogy. But I still like his prequel trilogy character. It's just different to me.
Well, maybe in the original trilogy he was younger, like makes him more active, and
it's actually the opposite. You got to remember the original trilogy, he was older, right? Because the prequel trilogy goes back in time. I think maybe he learned some lessons about mistakes that the Jedi made, and the way that they were able to be deceived by Darth Sidious, and they were very pragmatic and by the rules, and maybe they shouldn't have been a lot of times. That's part of the reason why Anakin got out of their hands and became Darth Vader. So he did change. But I did like in the prequel trilogy a lot. It's my least favorite movie out of the Star Wars saga, but in Attack of the Clones, when he comes in and saves the day, when Count Dooku's kind of beating the crap out of Obi-Wan and Anakin, and he's got his cane, and he like shakes off his robe, and he pulls out a lightsaber, and then just starts flying all over the place, right, doing crazy flips and stuff, and nobody saw that coming. And I remember when it happened in the theater, the place went crazy. We never seen Yoda in that way before.
I forgot that part. I shouldn't have described it when I said it. It doesn't really matter though.
I think Yoda, there's Star Wars fan or not, you probably know like Luke Skywalker and stuff, but everybody I know, like even if fans Star Wars or not, they'll know who Yoda is. Like they'll see him like, oh, that little green dude, or the guy that can jump around a lot, or somebody. And I think since he's so old, I guess that helps him with how wise he is, how powerful he is, because, over time, he's probably seen many types of Force and different enemies and different people that help him learn and become. So when he's older, he can actually be more powerful maybe when he's younger because of how wise he is.
Yeah, he's learned a lot, and the other thing about Yoda that I think makes him so memorable is he has some of the most memorable lines from the movies. Do or do not, there is no try. And luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Things, the lessons he taught Luke in those training scenes on Dagobah, to me, are like the most classic Star Wars scenes that there are. Those are the type of scenes that make Star Wars what it is. And Yoda's a big part of that.
It is the exact opposite of what you think of Mace Windu's lines.
That's exactly right. I do not like Mace Windu's lines. A Sith Lord. All right, Kade, who's your number 4?
My number 4, I had to think about this for a little bit. But I'm going to have to go with the Imperial Guards. Ones in the red that guard Darth Sidious. I found them so cool when I was watching the movies for the first time. When I saw them, I was like, whoa, because they're different. They're like a different looking character than most of the other Star Wars. They're not like the Stormtrooper scheme or like the Clone Trooper scheme. Or I found them really cool, like their red armor, and I've read. Whenever I played the Star Wars Lego games, I'd always be them because I thought they were so cool and how they looked, and I bet they were more powerful than some of the other guards they have because they guard the Emperor, so they have to be like better than the other guards.
When you say they're more powerful, I feel like it too, but they're not much in the act in the movies, really. You see them in one movie, in one scene, and that's it, really. Yeah,
in the movies, they kind of have more of a background role, but they do look really cool. And Kate's right, if they're guarding the Emperor, they must be pretty tough. There's 2 things I have to say about that. One is they didn't look very tough when Yoda came in and kind of flicked them off to the side, but Yoda's a master of the Force, right? Really, the only one who could rival him at that point in his Jedi career was Darth Sidious. But there is a really good comic series about the Emperor's Royal Guard, and it's called Crimson Empire. And it's not very long, and I actually have it upstairs, Kate. You should read it. It's about a couple guys who went through the training to become the Emperor's Guard, and it's really cool. They are Force sensitive, and it's like Darth Sidious teaches them enough to be his guard, but not enough to challenge him or become a Sith or anything like that. But they are very powerful. One of them's name was Karnor Jax, and he's a really cool character. I think you'd really like those, Kate. Okay, my number 4, I got Rey. And I chose Rey for a couple reasons. First of all, I tried to make my choices kind of span the different eras of Star Wars. So I didn't want to only pick original trilogy characters, even though typically those are my favorite. So I looked at the prequels and I looked at The Force Awakens. I didn't go into the cartoons for my top 5, but my favorite character from The Force Awakens was Rey. My second favorite was probably BB-8, but I chose Rey for this list for a couple reasons. Number 1, I really, really like Daisy Ridley, the actress that plays Rey. I think, she was an unknown coming into this movie. I think they struck gold in finding her. She's got a couple moments in the movie that really stick out to me. Just her ability to act, right? And the first one is, do you remember when Kylo Ren and Rey kind of encounter each other for the first time? And she has a blaster, that Han Solo gave her, and she's going to try to fire it at him. And she does a couple times, and Kylo Ren swats him off with his lightsaber as he's walking up. And then he uses the Force to swing her arm behind her side, and it's holding it in place there. That scene doesn't work unless Daisy Ridley really sells it, and she does. She's holding that back there, and I really believe that her arm was being held there by the Force. She just did a really good job with that. There's also one part when she's talking to Han Solo, and he asks her if she might want to join the crew for the Millennium Falcon, and she turns him down because she wants to go back to Jakku and wait for her family. But she's really excited that he asked her to do that. And she does this little nose wrinkle thing where she's smiling and she kind of wrinkles her nose. And every time I watch that scene, I'm like, it's just very believable that she's in that role. I really think she did a great job. Also, there's, coming out of The Force Awakens, there's a lot of questions about a lot of the characters, right? We don't know who Snoke is, where he came from. Is he Darth Plagueis? Is he not Darth Plagueis? Is he somebody else, right? Where's Luke been? Why has he been stuck on this planet by himself looking off a cliff for 20 years without, what has he been doing? There's all these questions, but the biggest mystery to me is, who was Rey? Who are her parents? Why was she left on Jakku? What's the deal with her? and that makes her intriguing to me. And then the last bit, I'm going to play this while we talk, is the soundtrack.
Yeah, I really like Rey too. I found her very mysterious, and she did a really well acting. Like you said, it felt like she was like, like you said, really like in it.
Also, I think my biggest question is, why do you like BB-8 more than Finn?
Finn's really cool. Don't get me wrong, I like Finn, but BB-8, he's kind of like, I liked him more than I thought I would. I thought he's like the R2 was in the original trilogy. He's just very likable. And about the soundtrack, I thought the soundtrack for this movie, you can kind of hear it playing in the background, was not as strong as the other Star Wars movies are. There's not as many memorable songs, but Rey's was one of them that did stick out to me, especially the part when she's sliding down that big hill, that sand dune, after she is done exploring the ship, and a couple other scenes where I did like her soundtrack. So that's another reason why she's probably my favorite character from The Force Awakens.
My biggest question is the vision she got when she touched the lightsaber. There was a lot going on there, and there was a lot of voices and faint sounds in the background that made me wonder, like, man, what does this all mean? And I feel like the next movie will give out a lot of it, but the last movie they make that's gonna finish the series that Disney's gonna do is gonna reveal a lot. But I really, really want to know what that means. Like, you heard, like, was it Yoda's voice? Didn't you get to hear Yoda's voice? Or
you heard
Ben
a lot
Kenobi's?
of voices. Yeah, Yoda was in there. I think Qui-Gon was in there. I think Ben Kenobi was in there. That part of the movie is the biggest mystery. It's the part that I'm most curious about too.
That's the second. For me is Snoke. I think he might be Mr. Darth Plagueis because he looks exactly like Darth Plagueis. He has the same head. And that's what I think.
Yeah, Snoke is a big mystery too, for sure. Did he make your list?
No.
Okay, well, who did make your list at number, what are we on, number 3?
Yeah. Number 3 is Obi-Wan. To me, like I said, Anakin has the coolest storyline, and part of the storyline is probably his second biggest. His first biggest is probably Luke, but his second is Obi-Wan. I like their story between each other, how they were side to side, and then they were rivals, and Obi-Wan just let him kill him. That's a question I still have, and they will never answer, I don't think. Why did Obi-Wan want to die?
Okay, so this is an interesting topic. We could have a whole hour-long discussion on this. I'm going to give you my 30-second opinion on that. Part of the prequels answers that question because Yoda teaches us or tells us that Qui-Gon has learned how to communicate from wherever he is after he dies, right? From the nether regions of the Force. And Yoda tells Obi-Wan, I will teach you how to commune with him, how to communicate with him. And he does, right? So the cartoon goes a little bit into that on how Qui-Gon reaches out to Yoda. Do you remember those Yoda episodes at the end of the Clone Wars?
Favorite episode.
Yeah, those are really good. And then when Obi-Wan dies, the lightsaber doesn't even hit him. He disappears before it gets to him, and Darth Vader's like stepping on his cloak. And in my mind, he chose to become what I call one with the Force, to go into that whatever region it is where he can communicate as a ghost, as a Force ghost, with Luke. Because he tells Vader, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can ever imagine. Why is it more powerful than Anakin could imagine or Vader could imagine? Because Vader doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't know how to go into the Force the way that Obi-Wan did and disappear like that. And when Yoda dies, same thing. His body disappears. I think he chose to, it was his time. He was ready. He chose to become one with the Force. When Qui-Gon dies, his body doesn't disappear. Why? He didn't know how to do it yet. He started studying the technique but hadn't learned how to do it fully. So it wasn't until after he died he figured that out. That's just my opinion. He died and he let Luke see him so that Luke would know how powerful the Force is and he could still receive training from him and Yoda and become the Jedi he needed to be to beat Vader and the Emperor.
Obi-Wan is probably he's my second favorite because I just find his character, like when I watched the movies for the first time, Obi-Wan, I loved Obi-Wan. I thought he was cool, and every time I watched Revenge of the Sith and I saw him fight Anakin, I was always going for Obi-Wan because even though I knew Anakin fell into the fire and lava and stuff, I knew I still be going like, come on Obi-Wan, come on Obi-Wan, every time they fought because he's just always a favorite for me. And
He's freaking Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he's freaking Obi-Wan. I love Obi-Wan too. He's been at the top of my list of favorite characters before for different periods of time. I love both of the actors that played him. Alec Guinness was the original Obi-Wan, and Ewan McGregor was the new one, and they both just knocked it out of the park. He was one of the strongest characters in all of the movies he was in. So good choice. All right, Kate, who do you got at number 3?
Number 3, I got Maz Kanata. This is my first and only character from the new movie Force Awakens. I found her funny for one when she climbed on the table and looking at Finn. Finn was like all surprised, and Han Solo was just like cool about it because he like knew. And the fact that she lived for 1,000 years, which isn't that longer than Yoda?
It is.
Yeah. So I found her awesome, and like she said that she saw many types of the Force, which I find cool because I want to know like is she powerful in the Force too? How'd she get the lightsaber in the first place? That was my biggest question. And like, what's down there? Like, what does she have down there? And I don't know where she went in the movie. She kind of like disappeared, but she was very mysterious, and I want to know what she has seen over the 1,000 years.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the last of Maz Kanata. She's kind of the Yoda of the Force Awakens, or the
Yoda's wife.
Yoda's wife of the sequel trilogy. No, she loves Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah, she says, "Where's my boyfriend?" I love that Wookiee. Remember? Yeah, I don't think we've seen the last of her. I think we're going to find out how she got the lightsaber at some point. I'm very interested in that, too. It's a very intriguing character. Jett, you got anything to say about Maz Kanata?
This is totally different to you. I still like her, but I just don't find her as one of my favorites. It's not worth it to me. She's just old and she knows the Force to me.
Yeah, I can see that. There were a lot of interesting characters in The Force Awakens, and she kind of got overshadowed. But I think Kade hit a good point when he talked about the mystery. There's a lot of mystery on how she became who she is and how she got the lightsaber and how she knows all that she knows.
And she knows, like, the Force is all around us. And she doesn't look like a Jedi or a Force user to me, but she still might know the Force because how long she lived. And she's probably very wise, like Yoda was. And I'm just curious if she was a Jedi maybe, or she was a Force user.
Yeah, I hope we get to find out. Okay, my number 3. Don't be looking at my list. You wait till I bring it up. My number 3, Darth Sidious / the Emperor. And I'll tell you why. When I was a kid and I watched Star Wars, right? Who is the bad guy in Star Wars?
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader. Darth Vader is the ultimate villain from any movie franchise in the history of cinema, of movies. In my opinion, Darth Vader is the number 1 villain. And when I found out that badass villain had a boss, I was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Darth Sidious is Darth Vader's boss, and he is the personification of evil, right? He has no redemption. There is no chance of him coming back. You know, Vader came back, and that's part of the character arc of Anakin Skywalker, of the hero, right? Restoring balance to the Force and all that, fulfilling the prophecy. Darth Sidious is just pure evil. He has no redemption. He has no motivation other than being a bad guy, right? He is like definition of Sith, in my opinion. The soundtrack for him, I don't have that pulled up. I'll see if I can find it here in a minute, is also just really, really, really cool. It's very menacing. It's a really kind of low-sounding guy singing in a chorus. Very cool. And also, dude, he does Force lightning. It's the first time you see it is when he does lightning on Luke.
Also, well, I think Darth Sidious has... hold on, how do I describe this? He is really... He is like you said, he's the main bad guy. Well, really... I could tell, like, when I watched number 3, when he was hinting about something, when he's telling Anakin that somebody killed Darth Plagueis when he was asleep, and to me that was hinting to me he was a bad guy. And when he betrayed it, I was like, I knew it. I knew he was the bad guy.
You know, with Darth Sidious pretending he was on the Republic, I find that hard because he was a powerful Sith, and you know, Jedis are also powerful in the Force, and he must have been really powerful because you know they can like sense if like a Force user is around because you know they're powerful and they can like sense. So I'm surprised he must have been powerful to hide and conceal that he was planning something for so long, and how you know Order 66, that 66 is like my second favorite number because Order 66 was like really cool to me. And you know how some of them, Captain Rex and his buddies, they hid from it. You know, they took their chips out, and I find it cool and like how Darth Sidious must have planned this out to betray everybody. Or not betray,
overthrow the Jedi Order. Yeah, I mean, it's a lifetime plan coming to fruition, and he was the mastermind behind all of it, and did it to perfection. Really, I mean, he's just really just an evil dude, and played it to perfection. My question is, did he really lose to Mace Windu, or was that all part of the act to get Anakin to turn? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I saw something on Instagram when I was browsing on the Star Wars thing, and there was a picture of the Rogue One, and it looked like what sort of like a Mace Windu.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. This is the part of the Emperor's theme I was talking about. I'll turn it up. Just really evil sounding, right?
I think it was a plot because, to me, Luke Skywalker is way stronger than Mace Windu, right? But like, Darth Sidious, but Darth Sidious kind of just like beat the crap out of Luke Skywalker. I don't think Mace Windu can beat Darth Sidious if Darth Sidious absolutely destroyed Luke Skywalker.
That's a good point, but it's tough because, first of all, Darth Sidious... Okay, so Mace Windu was probably the best lightsaber duelist of the Jedi Order during his time. Him or Yoda. They were both at the top, right? And Sidious maybe wasn't as... He became more powerful by the time Luke was... He had more years of training, right? And on top of that, he didn't really fight Luke in a lightsaber battle. He let Luke attack him, knowing that Vader would stop it. So then he just lightninged Luke when Luke decided, I'm not going to go to the dark side and try to kill you. I'm going to be a Jedi like my father before me, and he threw down his lightsaber. So tough to say, Luke didn't have a full-on lightsaber battle with Sidious.
With when the Mace Windu topic y'all had, I have a feeling, and Star Wars posted a picture on Instagram about a picture of like, or a small clip of the trailer, and like my connection was bad, so I kept pausing, and it paused in a scene where one of the new characters, I thought he kind of looked like Mace Windu a little bit. He had some like robot parts, so I thought like, oh, what if that's Mace Windu? I hope it is, because I liked Mace Windu. I thought the purple lightsaber was a really cool idea. You know, we always saw the green and the blue in the series, and I thought it was cool to add in like the purple lightsaber. It looked pretty cool.
It did look cool. I loved his lightsaber, but I can tell you that character is not Mace Windu. It's a new character. He actually comes from the Clone Wars.
From number 6, that's my favorite battle part when Luke and Vader fought. I like it better than number 5's because this time Luke was on top, even though he was his son, and surprisingly he's more powerful. Also, my favorite scene in Star Wars is when Luke looked down and you didn't see Darth Sidious, and then you just see that big thing come up, and you know Darth Sidious isn't coming back.
Yeah, that is a cool part. Good job, guys. All right, let's move on to our number 2s. Jett, who do you got for number 2?
My number 2 is Darth Maul. He has a lot to number 1, a lot into the cartoons, but I just wish he could be more in the movies besides just one movie. Like, I feel like he should have been bigger. Like, I wish it would actually show him coming back, right?
Yeah, no, I had Darth Maul as my number 2 also, which might surprise you. So I'll go ahead and talk about him now, since we're talking about him. Darth Maul, a couple things about him. Number 1, he looks totally badass, right? He's got to be the most sinister looking of all the villains in Star Wars. He's got those horns. He's got that red and black tattooed face, the cool black robes. And, dude, we've seen it now because of video games and the cartoons and stuff. But when in the movies, when he was introduced with that double-bladed lightsaber, it was amazing, right? The actor that portrays Darth Maul, his name's Ray Park. He's like a legit martial artist, and he can do all sorts of cool stuff. And you see it in the choreography of the lightsaber battles in the Phantom Menace. The guy who does his voice, his name is Peter Serafinowicz. He's awesome too. Darth Maul hardly has any lines, but they sound really cool. At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have our revenge. Just really cool lines. It sounds really cool.
Like, when I first started watching the Star Wars movie, watch number one of my favorite scenes also, when he turns on his double lightsaber, I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that thing? In my opinion,
I like the Phantom Menace. A lot of people don't like it. I do like it, but one of the biggest reasons I do is because of Darth Maul. Because that scene, when this song that you hear in the background, which is one of the coolest songs in all the soundtracks, the doors open, and Maul is standing there. He ignites his lightsaber, and you're thinking, okay, it's on. And then, boom, the other side ignites, and you're like, what? Just really cool. He's the coolest character in Episode 1, in my opinion. Okay, do you have anything to say about Darth Maul?
Yeah, about Darth Maul. I think they should have had more to him. You know, he was also in the Clone Wars with it, and with, you know, the robotic legs and stuff, and you know, he had the black lightsaber, which I thought was really cool when he used that against previously. I thought that was a really sick battle when that happened. Yeah, Darth Maul though, that's my favorite scene ever when he's in Phantom Menace. That's like my favorite scene actually in the prequels, yeah, because of how awesome it was when he was battling, you know, and like at the end there, and then like how young Obi-Wan's watching him and Qui-Gon battle. Even though Qui-Gon died, was pretty sad, but when Qui-Gon was like fighting him and like Obi-Wan was like getting ready, and then and then Darth Maul killed him and then looked over and like smiled at him, and then he came in and it was a big battle and it was pretty awesome. That was my favorite part.
Dad, I think you're pretty surprised that my favorite scene of battle, my favorite scene is when Luke fights. That's my favorite battle scene, when Luke fights Darth Vader. Because when I was younger, that was my favorite scene of fighting. I used to love it. I watched it all the time. I love the music. I just think that it's more interesting to see father and son battle than just two dudes that just met.
It means more to the story, you're right. But one of the reasons I put this on my sheet here, why I picked Darth Maul, was because of memories. And I'll tell you, we mentioned it at the beginning. This family is a Star Wars family. And how did we become that way? You guys might not even know this, so I'll tell you. It's not like I was a huge Star Wars fan my whole life. I really wasn't. I watched it when I was a kid, but I was too young to see it in the theaters. I was born in 80. When Return of the Jedi came out, it was 83. I was 2 years old. It's not like I was waiting in line to see it. I saw it as a kid. I had some of the toys, and I remember liking it, but I didn't think about Star Wars for 15 years. And then the prequels were going to come out, and they re-released the movies in the theaters, and I re-watched them. I remember actually having a movie marathon at my friend Charles's place, and he had them on VHS tape, which is what they used before DVDs. And I was like, wow, these are really cool movies. They remind me of my childhood, and I love them. But that's all it was, right? Similar to like The Goonies or something else that reminds me of my childhood. But I wasn't like a super fan like we consider ourselves now, right? What happened was I ended up watching the prequel trilogy in the theaters as the movies came out, and I became more and more of a fan. I got more and more into it. By the time Kade was born, he was not even 1 yet when The Revenge of the Sith was released in the theaters. It was released in 2005. I saw that one by myself. I skipped work early one day and went and watched it. And I loved it, but it was just another Star Wars movie. But I ended up buying the DVDs. We had a big DVD shelf. That shelf that's in your room, Kade, that your TV's on, used to stand up the other way, right? It wasn't horizontal, it was vertical. And we had all of our DVDs on that shelf, and they were in alphabetical order. And Kade, you were 2 years old, and you would walk by that shelf and pick movies to watch. And since you were 2, you could only see the bottom couple of shelves, and they were in alphabetical order. You'd pick movies that started with S and T and the rest of the alphabet, but you couldn't see anything above that. So you often picked Star Wars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that was where you could see. And you really fell in love with Star Wars. And I would come home from work, and you would say, hey, Dad, I want to see another Star Wars movie,
was me.
one that I haven't seen yet. No, this was Kade. This is
was
you were
close.
you were still a baby at this point. I'll get to you in a minute, but I would say okay, and I'd put a movie on, and then I'd come home the next day, and you'd say the same thing. I'd put the same movie on, but at the point where you fell asleep, and you didn't even know, you just liked watching it, and you became a fan. You got into the toys, which was a big thing. We still have those toys. You guys still play with them. It's 10 years later, right? And that's how I became a super fan, was through that experience of watching those movies with you. Then Jett was born a super fan. Jett came out and would sleep. He would sleep with me and Mom in the bed and play with his fingers pretending they were lightsabers. He couldn't talk yet, but he could go psh, 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 and pretend his fingers were lightsabers. You would do the Darth Vader breathing. You would do the Darth Vader Imperial March theme song. Bum, bum, bum.
I wore a Chewie costume every day.
You wore a Chewie costume, and you couldn't even talk yet, but you were already living and breathing Star Wars. And one of those memories that I have that I won't ever forget is what you said. You were 2 years old, and you would sit down in front of my computer and ask to watch the Darth Maul scene over and over and over again. And I would pop you down in front of YouTube and hit play, and you would watch that 20 times a day, right? And you just loved it. And so that's another reason why it made my list, was just because of the memories of how much you loved watching that. And it reminds me of us being a Star Wars family.
Also, why I said my favorite battle scene was when Luke and Vader. It just, if the movies came out in order, even though they didn't, like 1, 2, 3, if they actually came out, if you think about it, you were waiting for this battle for so long, for father versus son. Like, it's amazing to see them finally face off.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I think we talked Darth Maul a lot. You guys got anything else to say about him?
No.
Okay, Kate, who's your number 2?
My number 2, I have to go with R2-D2. R2-D2 is best droid ever. He'd be literally the best pet of all time. Like, he's always been one of my favorites, and I put him at my number 2 spot here, and I overrank him by everything, except for one thing, because he's just a cool character. Like how he moves and stuff, I find really awesome, and how he's with what's his name, C-3PO all the time, and like even he's one of those characters, you know, if you're not a Star Wars fan, you still know him, and like sometimes I'll be talking to people and I'll be like, hey, you fan of Star Wars? And they'll be like, no. I'm like, he's favorite character, and they'll be like they'll say either R2-D2 wrong, or they'll say it like in the wrong order, but they'll know who he is, and you know he's just a cool character. You know how he parted ways with C-3PO and got caught by the Jawas and like the little shoot thingy. I thought was really cool, and he's always just been there. You know how he helps Luke on Tatooine. He's about to jump off, and he jumps and he shoots his lightsaber out. I thought that was really cool.
I agree, Jett. What do you got to say about R2-D2?
Well, I know R2-D2 is the coolest droid, and he's really good, but to me, out of all characters of Star Wars and cartoons, I just think that's a bunch of bull crap.
You think it's bullcrap that he's number 2 on your brother's list?
Yes, I think it's a bunch of bull crap.
Well, why? Tell us why you think it's a bunch of bullcrap.
Well, think about all those awesome Sith, all those battles, everything, all those droids, all those shooting, and out of all action parts, you choose a freaking small droid.
Okay. I hear you. Star Wars is made up of Jedi and Sith and all these cool characters. It's also made up of aliens and bounty hunters and smugglers and droids. That's a big part of Star Wars, is it not?
Yeah, but like it isn't the main thing. Like you're forgetting about Luke, you're forgetting about Obi-Wan. Like I would rather have a number 2 choice besides R2-D2, just a small little trash can.
Well, I thought he still fights pretty cool. I remember forgot what movie it was, but he's surrounded by droids and he squirts oil everywhere. He squirts oil everywhere and then lights it on fire and kills all the droids. I thought that was so cool on how a droid like him, astromechs, who are usually used just for like, I guess we would call them pets, but he can like be in battle and he's like a clever droid. I thought that was really cool.
Well, also say that to number 3 when Yoda walks in the room, he just goes and just moves his fingers, and those guys go, oh.
All right, how about this, Jett? R2-D2, who is just a droid, saves Anakin's life with the turbo lifts on that ship, right? He saves Luke's life when he fixes the X-Wing stabilizers when he's fighting in the Death Star. he reactivates the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon and saves all of their lives, all of our heroes' lives. And he saved all their lives in the trash compactor on the Death Star. R2-D2 is the hero of Star Wars, and he's my number 1. So, in your face.
Well, number 2, okay, he did all that stuff. But for number 1, that's a bunch of Brahma bull crap. That is just horrible.
Well, I'm going to go right into this because, Kade, your number 2 is my number 1, and we're going to finish with our number 1s. He's in every movie. R2's in every movie, and he plays a big role in every movie. In fact, a lot of fans say that Star Wars is the story is kind of told through C-3PO's and R2-D2's eyes. They are the first characters you see. The camera follows them where they go, and they are involved in every scene until really The Force Awakens. But even then, R2 plays a pivotal role when he comes to life at the end of the movie and tells everybody how to get to Luke Skywalker. I already told you why he's the real hero of the movies. Now, don't get me wrong. You know how much I love Luke. Luke is my all-time favorite character, probably tied with R2. But for this list, I picked R2 because of the reasons I told you before. I wanted to do something a little different with the Star Wars characters. R2 is also very lovable. He's memorable. He makes really cool noise. And he's not even alive. How do I fall in love with a character who's not even alive?
Okay, you just changed my mind about R2.
and here's the thing. Think about The Force Awakens, okay? There are there's several big scenes in that movie when you see these original trilogy characters coming back into the movies and you get really happy to see them, okay? So when Han Solo walks on the Millennium Falcon and says, "Chewie, we're home," everybody got really excited, right? There's a part at the end of the movie when you finally see Luke, when Rey gets there and hands him the lightsaber, and where she's holding out the lightsaber. He doesn't even say anything, but it's like a big moment because you finally see Luke. In my mind, when R2-D2 came to life and started making noises, that was as big of a scene to me as when they saw Luke and when Chewie and Han got back on the Millennium Falcon. I was just as excited at that part, and he's a droid.
Well, when you said about, I think R2 has the biggest role in The Force Awakens. He's the one that finds Luke.
I wonder how he got the map, too.
Well, he was with Luke for a while.
Luke had to give it to him, I think. There's a couple theories on that. The Sith wiped out a bunch of data about the Jedi and about their history when the Emperor was in charge, and Luke went looking after the original Jedi Temple. That's where we all have to assume that's where he is on that island. R2 never got his memory wiped. Remember, they even said it in the movies, not to wipe his memory, and he might have still had that data saved somewhere. Either that or Luke gave it to him before he left. That's what I think.
Speaking of Luke, he is my number 1. Of course, it is kind of an obvious decision. I bet most people would pick Luke for number 1 also. He is a big character. In fact, probably the second biggest besides Darth Vader in the movies. And that's kind of obvious, so that's my choice.
My number 1 has got to be Han Solo. It's been Han Solo for quite a while now, because he's an iconic character. With the actor Harrison Ford being in other movies and Indiana Jones, it just makes him a lovable character. You can't really go wrong with Han Solo, and he's an awesome character. He kills all the stormtroopers because they can't shoot and aim, but it's really cool. I like his blaster a lot. His blaster is really cool. I would really like to buy a replica of one.
That would be cool.
I'm surprised you like Han Solo more than Boba Fett. I want to see them face off.
That would be cool. I'm really glad you guys picked Luke and Han for your number 1s. I left them both off my list on purpose, but they are obviously the 2 most favorite characters from probably the whole trilogy and definitely the original trilogy, or the whole saga, I should say, and definitely the original trilogy. Han is the cool guy. He's the guy that everybody wants to be, and the ladies love him. Luke is the hero, the everyday guy that we all kind of feel like sometimes. We kind of feel stuck, and we want to go on our own hero's journey, and Luke does that, and we live the story through him. Both of them are great choices for number 1, and I think you guys did a really good job with your list.
Well, I don't really have anything else to say. Do you?
Yeah, I got a couple small things. I came up with a few honorable mentions. Do you know what that means, honorable mention?
Oh, yeah, I have some too.
It's guys that almost made my list. I'm not going to go into a whole ton of detail, but I wanted to mention a couple more here just because I feel like they were worth mentioning. My first is the Scout Trooper and the Snow Trooper. The Stormtroopers are, I even thought about putting them on my list too, but I put these two because when I was a kid, I thought the Snow Trooper was awesome. He looks different. He looks really cool. The Scout Trooper doesn't look as cool to me, even though he has binoculars for his goggles, but does cool stuff. They get to ride those speeders. Their gear is really cool. So I put them both on here. I've got Greedo on here. He's part of the ambiance of characters that makes the Star Wars movie saga a universe that we feel like we live in. They're on a planet called Tatooine that's not real, in a galaxy far, far away that's not real, and they have creatures that are not real. Yet when I watch that movie, I feel like I'm living in their universe, and it's because of characters like Greedo and others in the Cantina that really sell that and just make you feel like it's real. And my last one is Ahsoka. I wanted to pick somebody from the cartoons, and Ahsoka, to me, it was the coolest addition to the awesome characters that we get in the movies that came out of the cartoons.
Yeah, I also want to mention Ahsoka too. Even in the new Rebel series, I don't want to spoil it, but she's awesome in that movie. She helps the main characters so much, and like they basically saved when Ahsoka comes. And she was my favorite in the Clone Wars. She was my favorite character. Every time I saw her, I'd be like, oh, I want to watch her fight again. She's so cool. And my favorite color is green. She had green lightsabers, even though she has white ones now in the new Rebel series. I thought it was really cool to see her again, and it was a great addition to the Rebel series. At first it wasn't that big because we wanted more Clone Wars, because Clone Wars was one of the first the first cartoon that got like really big for Star Wars, and I thought she was just an awesome character, and she fought differently, and how she was like cocky towards Anakin, and I thought that was really cool.
All right, my honorable mentions is Ezra. I can explain a lot about him, but I'll just do it kind of short. Because as Dad got me into Star Wars, and as he watched stuff as a kid, like, Star Wars a lot, all these characters, I feel like when I grow up, I will remember Ezra a lot, because when I first got into Star Wars, I felt like he's kind of like Luke, because he went from, like, he's not a Jedi, and then Yoda trained him, and Kanan trained him. Like, Ezra is just kind of like Luke to me, and maybe you don't think that, but that's what I personally think.
No, I like that. That's good. I'm glad you brought him up. Any other honorable mentions?
Oh yes, General Grievous. He is huge. He has 4 arms. He is awesome. But why I didn't put him on the list? Same for Darth Maul. He isn't in. Well, I put him in the list, but he's not my number 1 because he needs to be in the movie more. He's only in number 3 for a little bit of time, and he only fights Obi-Wan, and that's the only time you see him.
That's true. Kade, any others for you?
My last honorable mention has got to be Savage. Savage was a huge character to me when he came out in the Clone Wars. Like, Zabraks have always been my favorite alien species of all species because they look awesome. They got horns, they got cool tattoos, and Darth Maul was in Zabrak, and he was like amazing in the movie when we first saw him. And Savage, like him coming in, how he portrayed his character with Darth Maul, I thought was awesome. And how they were, and how what was the girl that gave
Mother Talzin?
Yeah, she how she related and helped and did stuff with Savage, I thought was really cool. And he was like a different type of Zabrak. He most Zabraks are red, but he was a yellow Zabrak, which I thought was cool.
I have another one.
Go ahead.
Do you know General Grievous, those guards?
Yeah, Magna guards.
Those are my favorite guards. I think they're cooler than the red dudes. I think
they're
cool.
awesome in the Lego game.
Yeah. They're the best to me. They're just amazing. But like I said, instead of stormtroopers, I want them to be the main bad guy, the main troops that can actually fight well. They did pretty well against Obi-Wan, I think.
Yeah, they did.
He must be pretty good if he's guarding General Grievous also. And Obi-Wan had a hard time with General Grievous, like, it was a good fight. Like, I enjoyed watching that scene, and it's something I want to remember when I grow up.
Well, good choices, guys. Good job. I'm glad we chose this topic for our first episode. I touched on it earlier, but we are a Star Wars family. We all have other things that we get into. Kade's in the video games and Call of Duty and being a badass wrestler, and Jett is into WWE and baseball and a few other things, and I'm into my baseball cards. But we always come back to Star Wars. We always have. And even Mom has become part of that group, which is really cool that we can all experience that together. So I think this was a really good choice for our first episode. You guys agree?
Yeah. Me and Dad and Kade, we're kind of a big fan of the movie Sandlot. And my favorite scene, I was telling Dad earlier, is when I don't know if you've seen it, but he says, there's a famous line, well, not really famous. He says, to us, baseball was just a game. To Benny, baseball was life. For us, is like, people think Star Wars is just a show and people enjoy. To this family, Star Wars is life.
Very well said, Jett. I like that a lot. You're absolutely right. So now that we're reaching the end, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to our first episode of 5 to 1. You can check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/5to1 podcast. The 5 is the number 5. Leave us your opinions there. If you liked what we had to say, come on there and tell us. If you thought we missed somebody really important, come on there and tell us. We'd love to hear your opinions. Also, please take the time to give us a review on iTunes or whatever Android offers for podcasts. We welcome any feedback, and it helps our podcast gain exposure. Before we call it a wrap, any final thoughts on our Star Wars characters?
Not that I know of.
You can also give ideas for us to do podcasts if y'all want to listen to something else, or want to hear something from us. We'll always look at the feedback. So
absolutely, good point. Yeah, give us your ideas. We'd love to have them. All right, please join us next time for our discussion on our top 5 WWE superstars all time.
Kade's not really excited by that one.
I am, sort of.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.